What was it like playing Winter's SEO, and will there be a rematch? I answered this question and more in today's Necron Q&A. It's coming right up.
Necrons!
Nick speaking, and welcome to this video. And if you're new to the channel and you want to keep up to date with all things Necrons, then please subscribe and hit the bell button to turn on all notifications so you don't miss an upload. Right, today is the day I'm going to answer your Necron questions from the previous Q&A video. Before that though, I've got a question for you. Right, when I started my Necron army, the first unit that I built and painted was the Necron Warriors. Well, you needed troops, of course, to play the game back then. Plus, well, they're the nearest that we've got to the Terminator, which was one reason why I fell in love with the Necron army. Terminators, how cool is that? What I would love to know is, what was your first unit that you built and painted? Let me know in the comments box below. Okay, so here we go. I've got the questions ready to answer. I've got my cup of coffee because this video is a bit more of a chilled and relaxed video. There's not going to be too much editing. And the first question is from Baldermort's Guide to Warhammer. Without a shadow of a doubt, one of the best lore channels here on YouTube. He's absolutely amazing. His voiceovers are just superb, and he's fun and funny at the same time. Definitely check his channel out. There will be a link to his channel and everyone else's channel in the description below. So Baldermort says, what would you want to see if the Silent King was to return, model wise and or stats and buffs? Would you want something like the Osirarch figure with an entourage, or a nice single figure? Very good question. If he was to return, I think just a single figure would do me fine. What would he be like? I'm thinking, basically, if you take Imhotep the Stormlord and just make him bigger and better. Sort of how I would imagine him, because Imhotep's one of my favourite models, and yeah, I would like to have something like Imhotep but bigger and better. Now, in terms of the stats, now that is interesting, and I have given this a bit of thought. I'm not really sure about the Silent King's actual stat line, but I think it would be good if he could buff the army somehow, and I think there's two ways that maybe I would like to see that. One would be he helps with morale somehow, so I'm thinking maybe auto pass morale if you take the Silent King in your army. And I think that would really help the Necrons, and it would help us get warriors on the table a little bit more, because we won't be spending 2 CPs for morale each time we take heavy casualties on our big squads of 20 warriors. So yeah, I'd like to see auto pass morale for Necrons. I know we've got a good leadership, but I think it would help our warriors. I'd also like to see, if you take the Silent King in your army, then you get an army-wide 4+ RP for reanimation protocol units. Now, I don't think that should be buffed with Cryptic, so 4+ should be the best that you can get, and I think that will maybe help us take different HQs rather than Cryptics, because Cryptics are quite an important HQ unit, but if the Silent King could do that for us, well, maybe we could take different characters on the table as well. So maybe something along those lines. Great question, and I really hope we do see the Silent King return at some point, and it would be very interesting to see what he's got. Right, next question. We have a question from Drewtavian, Eternity Reaper. And he says, do you think the Crons suffer from the rule of 3 for vehicles, etc., more so than other forces? Would you keep or remove this rule? It's got another question, but let's answer this one. Do we suffer more than others? Well, I think it's a hard one. I suppose arguably maybe we do a little bit. I'm not sure what's happening. My light is flickering. I think we arguably do suffer a little bit more, but I wouldn't change the rule, because without that rule I think we'd be suffering probably even more, down to the fact that, well, others would be taking more advantages of that ability to take more than 3 units. Necrons have, I mean, personally I find it quite frustrating that we can't take more than 3, but that's from making a themed list point of view. So for example, my flayed one list, ideally I want 6 units of 10 flayed ones in that list. However, I've got to take my 60 flayed ones in 3 units of 20. I'm forced to do that because of the rule of 3. So I think it's a drawback when it comes to themed lists, because with themed lists, generally you would take a particular unit and then you would spam that unit. Not necessarily because it's the best unit, but because it's the unit you're building your army around. So from that point of view, it's a bit of a disadvantage. However, I think it's probably a good rule overall for the game, and I would keep it. Okay, thanks for the question. Next question. I have no idea why my light is flickering. It's an LED light on the mains, yet it's flickering. Okay, on to the next question. It's from Basic Miniature Painting. He says, what new equipment or machine stuff should Necrons get? Like, what's next for the Necrons? Like, say, a new, more powerful weapon. I think I would like to see war size a bit better than they are at the moment. Maybe going back to the old days where they used to ignore invulnerable saves. War size were very good weapons. I'd like to see something better for the war size. Maybe they do mortal wounds, or again they just ignore invulnerable saves or something. But yeah, I don't know that we need more war gear, but I would like to see some of our war gear that we've got be improved. Yeah, I don't think we need more. It's like we've already got Tesla, we've got Gauss, and we've got particle weapons, which obviously no one uses. Do we need another gun format? No, we just need rules changes for what we've got. Okay, next question is from Maxi, cuccociocotti. Maxi. And they say, do you want to play... Oh, actually, I forgot. I've got to go back. Okay, well, let's answer this question. I've got to go back to that second question from earlier. So professional. Right, Maxi says, do you want to play competitive lists? Another question, do you play tournaments? I think I am playing fairly competitive lists at the moment. My 2020 list is pretty competitive. I'm not necessarily playing 3 Doomsides and 3 Doomsday Arcs, but I do have plans to play those lists, because I think it'd be nice to have a mixture of my current army lists that I play and maybe some more meta-based lists. Do I play in tournaments? I have played in tournaments, not many. I've played 3, maybe 4. Yeah, I do enjoy the tournament scene, but I work most weekends and it's difficult for me to get to the tournaments more than anything. So I have a few restrictions. But yeah, I've got nothing against tournament play. I've had nothing but good experience playing in events. Right, back to the question from Drewtavian. His second question was, have you played any of the computer games that contain Necrons, and would you ever play any of them? No. I haven't played the games and I wouldn't play them. I don't do computer games. I just don't have enough time, basically. That's it. Right, okay, so carrying on, we've got a question from Soul Survivor. And they say, what would you say are Necron's weak points and strong points? Okay, so weak points is probably range. We're pretty short ranged on our weapons, and that's probably one of the weakest points. I mean, obviously you could like go hypercritical within the army, but I think as a ballpark thing, our weakest point, if you said to someone, you know, what our Necrons are not that great at, and it's long-ranged shooting. Okay, we've got some long-range stuff, we've got some Doomsday arcs and stuff, but it's quite limited and it's quite random. Destroyers, for example, used to be 36 inches, now they're 24 inches. You know, there's the range is short. However, on the flip side, and to answer your second part of the question, I think that's our strongest point, is that we are very good at mid-ranged shooting. You know, that 24 inches or closer, we can be quite devastating with our shooting. So that's one of our strongest points, I would say. Great question, yeah. I'm sure I'll get some comments about that below, about what people think are the strong and weak points, because it is quite an interesting topic. I've gone for a very dumbed down version there, let's say, for my answer. Right, next question is from Ed Rutherford, and he says, it wouldn't hurt to see you play a meta list once in a while. Thank you. Yep, I do plan to do that. What I would prefer more though would be for you to discuss what the mission is, and when, and that's what the mission is, and then what goes into your thought process when you make your army list. What roles does it play? Can you cover more on that one? How does this help you win? What synergies are there? Okay, that is a very good question. It's also not a question, but it's something which I certainly can cover in the future. I think the only thing, the reason why I put it as a question in this Q&A today is because I wanted to discuss the mission and what goes through my thought process. I suppose I sort of, yeah, let's answer that one. That's why I put it in there. So when I'm looking at building an army, I don't build an army around a specific. I don't build an army around a certain mission, and what I do is I build an army around how the army works and can cope with most missions. And the way I do that is I try to have, I suppose, almost like, I divide my army into three almost. I have like a backfilled area, things that can sit on some objectives, and that can be, depending on the list type, it can be either just like a couple of units, or it could be a big amount of units. But yeah, I try to have a couple of units at least that can sit on backfilled objectives. And then I try to have a lot of units which go into the midfield area, like destroyers and immortals and tomb blades and stuff, you know, stuff that can go forward and just stay in the middle, take full advantage of that mid-range shooting. And then I like to have stuff which is a bit more attacking, to give your enemy something to think about, whether that's wraiths or, you know, whatever, just stuff that can push forward, almost disposable stuff. So I try to have some disposable stuff that can go forward, get early mission objectives and cause distractions. Then I like some midfield stuff to sort of hunker down in the middle of the table, take board control, get midfield objectives and put on the hurt. And I like to have a bit of backup with some sort of rear stuff that can go on rear objectives. So that's my general format when it comes to a list on the whole. Great question, thank you. Right, the next question is from David Williamson, and he says, I had no idea that you had a battle with Mr. Winters. My question, what was that like, and is there any chance of a rematch? Would love to see another match between my two favourite YouTubers. Would also like to see you use a meta list, as you don't often adhere to the meta rules. Meta lists. Okay, yes, Winters SEO. That was awesome, that game. Really enjoyed it. Winters came to my house, I think it was a couple of years ago now. And yeah, what a great guy he is, very friendly, and yeah, we had a really good game. Now I was playing Index Necrons, and I think he just had his Space Marine Codex through, and we had it was a great game, and yeah, I did pretty well. I won't spoil the result, but I did perform well considering I was using a very overpriced index army. However, I haven't really spoken to Winters since then much. At the time, we were all being sponsored by Wargames. However, that sort of split up a little bit now. So we were all in a WhatsApp chat, and I was talking to him quite regular. But we don't do that now, so I haven't really spoken to Winters. Plus, I know Winters is incredibly busy, especially now he's got the Warzone website thing that he does. So he is very busy. And I know, I mean, when I played him, I had to book him like 6 months up in advance to play him. I probably have to book him up now at least a year in advance. However, maybe you could help me play Winters in a rematch. So what we're going to do, hopefully you'll help me out here, is I'm going to put in the description and in the pinned comment a link to one of Winters' videos. If you could go to that video, and I'll put down a little paragraph like, Winters, we want to see you play IDIC again, we want a rematch or something. I'll put that down below, copy that, go to his video and paste it. Let's comment bomb Winters' video to let him know that you all want to see me play Winters in a rematch, because that would be really, really cool to see. Okay, if you could do that, that would be great. Right, next question. Okay, so the next question is from Vladimir Zhelamsky, and he says, what do you think about the viability of using the pair of Monoliths and Deceiver to deliver a super alpha strike? The Deceiver moves himself and the Monolith, as well as any shooter units that are not supposed to charge, within 12 inches of the enemy. In the movement phase they get even closer, then the Catan casts his thing and the Monolith brings in 3 or more units for 2 CPs from the Tomb World and 1 from the deployment zone. Then obviously the harvest begins. I think that 2 times 20 warriors and 10 Lich Guard would be optimal. Okay, yes, I mean, it's going to be a fun combo. I don't think you're going to be probably taking it to a tournament, but definitely for fun games. I mean, it reminds me a bit of the Living Tomb formation, which I played quite a lot. So I had the Tesseract Vault and 2 Monoliths, and then I had some deep striking Catans. I think I could deep strike them back then. That was a lot of fun, but I think fun, yes. The issue that you've got obviously is if you don't get first term, like anything I suppose really these days in 8th edition, but yeah, if you're investing those points in Monoliths, you're going to be at a disadvantage straight away really. Fun games, yeah, and it can work and have a lot of fun, so I say go for it, you know, why not? Okay, the next question is from Who Took My Dice, a Miniature Wargaming, and he says, if you could create me the Silent King data sheet, what stats would you give him? What kind of abilities and special rules? So this is pretty much the same question as before. Stat wise, I'd just beef up his stats basically, take Imatech and make his stats better. So yeah, I think he should get a 2+ invulnerable save, shouldn't he? After all, that new Orc Grot thing, it's got a 2+ invuln. We should have it, shouldn't we? Yeah, just beefed up really, you know, better weapon skill, better strength, better toughness. That's what I'd like to see, plus an awesome close combat weapon, maybe a little bit like the Pariah weapon used to be, so it's like a Warsaw with a Gauss blaster built in. That'd be pretty cool. Yeah, something like that. Next question is from CosmicCal, and he says, could you maybe recommend some budget things for 40k? Me and my friends are all in secondary school and don't really have an income. Keep up the great videos, Necrons. Thank you, CosmicCal. Yes, Thanks for watching all your comments. I appreciate that. Obviously, you're quite young. Right. Yeah, your best bet is to make some cardboard cutouts to proxy the units. And if you've got no money to buy the units, that would be my suggestion. Little cardboard cutouts, and you can put them on little stands and make up some stands, cardboard stands even, and that would do the job perfectly to play games like that. That is what I would recommend. You got any tips for CosmicCal about playing with no money effectively? Yeah, let them know in the comments box below. Right, the next question. Put something in my eye, which doesn't help. Yeah. Next question is from Kyle Herring, and he says, what's the easiest or best way to utilise Warsaw Lichguard? I love the look of them and want to maximise their damage. Okay, so yeah, it's a tough one. Lichguard, Warsaw. I like the model, and the reason why I like, I like the unit, and the reason why I like the unit is because it's the closest we've got to Pariah, really. Yeah, Warsaw Lichguard. I have used them, and I've used them out of a Monolith, but that wasn't in a competitive environment. That was just playing my buddy, and they did quite well. The problem that you've got is obviously the Monolith has to get close, so you've either got to move it into range or you've got to deep strike it, and then deep strikes on turn 2, and then your unit can't get out until turn 3. You of course can use the Deceiver to sort of move the Monolith into position. That could work, but then you're buying a Monolith which really is just over pointed for what it does. So the other options, you've got the Night Scythe. You could potentially put them in a Night Scythe, but the problem with the Night Scythe is it could go down very quickly and very easily if you've got if you haven't got turn 1. You could use the Zandrek Oberon combo to try and get them there, but then you're investing points in those units. I think the best way is probably the Veil of Darkness. I think just hide the unit turn 1 and vow the unit and hope you roll well on the assault, I suppose. It's not an ideal situation to be in. You can make them work, but you're very susceptible if you don't get first turn to either your delivery system being killed or the actual unit itself being killed. So it is a tough one. They're just not in a great place really at the moment. However, I don't use them. Maybe you do. So if you use them and you use them successfully and you've got some tips, why not put them in the comments box below, because this whole channel is about sharing our Necron knowledge. So yeah, any tips, put them down in the comments, definitely. Okay, next question is from Adam L. Davis Jr. And he says, what do you think our next model or codex update will be, or when? Gonna start that again. I'm not gonna edit. When do you think our next model stroke codex update? Okay, so I think we won't get a codex until, it's so hard to say. Obviously we know what the rumours are. Probably the rumours are going to be correct. It's going to be around 9th edition time before we get a new codex. I think we will be getting a model in Psychic Awakening. It seems like it is going to be Illuminor. I don't think it's going to be the Silent King. I think it will be Illuminor, but we'll have to wait and see. But a plastic Illuminor, well, that'd be cool. But slightly disappointing after the little hype about the Silent King that we had. I believe Psychic Awakening is due in around May time for Necrons. Okay, next question is from Hatework, and he says, when can we look forward to seeing your new and improved Flayed One list take on Richard's Orc Horde? I'm really looking forward to all those units in close combat. Okay, not too long hopefully. I've got my first draft of that Flayed One list, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to playing it. So it's quite interesting really, because where it's a themed list, it's a lot of people have different ideas. I posted the list on my members only community tab, and I had some great feedback there, and some interesting thoughts on my list and how people would go in a different direction building a list around 60 Flayed Ones. The great thing about a themed list is you're just making the list for fun really. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to playing it. I know Richard has finished building and painting his mech gun conversion, so I think he's almost ready, but I think he's going to play his Thousand Suns a little bit more first, and then it will be the orcs, and yeah, I'm going to try and get that Flayed One list on the table as soon as I can. So yeah, keep watching basically. Okay, next question is from 36, and he says, do you think the Monolith is overpriced or underpowered? Got another question, let's do this one. Is the Monolith overpriced or underpowered? Well, for the current points it's underpowered, but it's also overpriced for the current rule, so it's both. It's actually both, yeah. If you want to keep the rules, yes, it's both, isn't it? It's both. The Monolith is both overpriced for the rules and it's underpowered for the points, so it's both. Second question, how long are your usual games you make battle reports for, namely for a 2,000 point game? That's a great question. It depends on how the game goes really. If it's one of those games which pretty much only takes 2 or 3 turns for the bulk of the army, but the bulk of 2 or 3 turns for one person basically to take control of the game, then it's a lot quicker than a game which goes to the wire and you're taking like 5 or possibly even 6 or 7 turns. However, when Richard and I play, we usually play during the day. I pick him up about 8:30 in the morning after a Necron girl's gone to school. We get to my house, probably set up about 9 o'clock-ish, and that can take us, with all the recording, up to, well, the earliest we probably would finish it would be about 2 o'clock-ish, but sometimes that can go on till 6 o'clock. We've had games that have gone on till 6 o'clock. You know, those long drawn out games that, you know, just take longer, you know, where somebody doesn't annihilate the other person. But yeah, it takes a lot more time to record the game, and that, bearing in mind, is just with me recording all the dice rolls for the first turn 1, some on turn 2. I don't record all the dice rolls for the whole of the game, as you know. And one reason for that is time restrictions, but also because I do appreciate, like, I personally don't like long drawn out battle reports. I try to keep my battle reports between half an hour and an hour at the most. Ideally half an hour 45 minutes is my aim for my battle reports, but obviously it's all dependent upon the game itself. But yeah, so that's roughly how long it takes. It's variable, but it's a good few hours. Yeah, great question, thank you for that. Okay, so the next question is from Michael Weidner, and he says, I would like to see what you would bring against an Imperial Soup list, like Knights or Space Marine chapter combo. They seem to be really hard to deal with. I guess that counts as my question too. How would you deal with an Imperial Soup list dealing with units only from our codex? I like Forge World, but it's not guaranteed. You get to use them in tournaments. Knights and Marine combos are pretty nasty, especially now that Marines are revamped. Doomsday arcs are nice, but the randomness is a killer, even with 3 Necrons. Yeah, okay. In terms of the list, I mean, I would just take my list. So I mean, at the moment, obviously, I've got my 2020 list that I'm using, and what you don't want to do is build a list, especially if you're going to an event, is you don't want to build a list specifically to take on knights or the suit type list, because you are going to face other armies as well. And yeah, I mean, my list I think could probably deal reasonably well against those armies, but it's going to be a tough combo for Necrons regardless of what you take in your list, to be fair, because, well, Marines are just really good at the moment, and combo that with Imperial Knights, and that's a tough nut to crack. You're going to have to really try and play the mission and try to get ahead early on, take some board control with your units and get into range to get as much devastating shooting back on them as possible, and try your best to roll well and get first turn, because first turn is just so important these days. And I know there's not a lot you could do about it. A 1 in 6 chance, but just get yourself some lucky dice. Okay, thanks for the question, Michael. Next question is from Brush and Quill, and he says, do you think bringing back the teleport on monoliths would solve the transport problem and be on theme and fluff for Necrons? A lot of units seem to be able to teleport. Absolutely, I think Necrons need a lot more teleportation. We used to have the Veil of Darkness, and the Veil of Darkness you could use once per turn, not once per game. I'm sure we could. Yeah, we could. And then we had the Monolith, where we could teleport units from the table through the Monolith. Then they got to re-roll their We'll Be Back, as it was called then, the reanimation protocols. You got to re-roll them when you put them through the Monolith, and it was fun. It helped us it helped us with our movement, because we are pretty slow on some of our units, especially our foot snogging units, just 5 inches. I think we should be able to either reuse that Veil of Darkness more than once in a game, or maybe we should be able to take at least 2 Veil of Darknesses, so we could have 2 units with Veil of Darkness. Maybe you could just have 2 units with a Veil of Darkness, but you can only use 1 Veil of Darkness per turn. Something like that, you could put some restrictions in. But yes, I think the Monolith definitely needs better rules, and using the teleportation of a Monolith a bit better than the rules are at the moment would help it quite a bit. Yeah. For the points, like I said, the Monolith just isn't doing the job. That's it, basically. It's no good. I mean, it's okay for fun games, and you can use it, obviously, but it's got a long way to go to make it into most people's Necron lists. Okay, so we've got a question here from Greyson Runyon, who, in the last video, I linked you up to my Necrons Suck video, and he went and watched that and came back and posted this. So, looking back at the video compared to where Necrons are now, have your thoughts changed at all with the way that the current meta plays, both competitively and casual? As a side note, I still don't think Necrons suck, but I do feel like we've had to shift back to 7th edition mindset of only taking certain units to be viable in competitive setting, which is a shame. Okay, so yeah, basically when that index came out, I was made a video basically saying that Necrons don't suck. A lot of people were unhappy with Necrons at the time, and I made that video saying, well, actually I quite like it, because now most of the units in the book are very usable, and at the time they were. However, we've had a lot of new releases and new codexes and updated rules, and the meta, we have a meta now which we didn't back then, and yeah, Necrons are in a totally different place. yeah, I mean, competitive play is like totally different to basement gaming. I think like basement gaming, playing with your buddies in a, I suppose you could say, semi-competitive environment, or even just in a fluffy environment. I think Necrons are actually really good, and I think most people that don't have a really competitive list will have a hard time against Necrons. However, it's that top level where we do struggle a bit without having to take certain units. So you're right, I mean, you know, you do have to take certain units, and I'm trying to make a list that's competitive without taking those units, which is what my 2020 list was all about, really. And I think I've done quite a good job there. I'm still tweaking it, still got to be tweaked, but yeah, I'd be quite happy taking that list to an event, and I think that I could win a reasonable amount of games with that list. Sounds like a challenge, doesn't it? I'll have to get some new models. I need some proper immortals. Go and watch that 2020 list if you want to find out more about that. I'll link that up in the description below. But yeah, I don't think Necrons suck still, but I think you're right. I think we have shifted back a little bit to only being able to take certain units for the army to be to have a chance in competitive play. Okay, next question is from the Angel Fallen 616, and they say, do you think Necrons will get new rules for Triarch units when Zarek does make an appearance? Maybe this could be a kind of dynasty rule, since the Triarch is what the Necrons call their royal council. Actually, yes. If the Silent King does return, I'm thinking that we'll get a new dynasty, subfaction, whatever it's called. I think we'll get a dynasty code, a new one, and I think it could be based around Triarch units, and I think that would be super cool. Probably should have answered this question with the other question I had before, but yeah, a new dynasty code based around Triarch units, and something that's really good to make Praetorians and Triarch Stalkers and all those Triarch units better. Maybe even have a new Triarch Pariah unit. That would be super cool. The Silent King, we get a new Silent King model, we get new Pariah models, and we get a new dynasty code for Triarchs. I like it. I like it. What do you think? Comment below, let me know. I love reading your comments, by the way. I love reading them. Right, next question is from CM Wargames. This is from the famous Richard from my battle reports, and he says, is there any series of videos you would consider remaking? Absolutely. You know, I'm making a Necron video once a week. That's 52 videos a year, and I do really want to up that to 2 videos a week if I get the time, and that's a lot of Necron videos to make on a single Necron codex. So I think where rules change and the meta changes, a bit like my 2020 series, you know, I'm remaking the videos on the units which maybe I've made videos on before. I think where things change all the time, there's definitely room for a new series of videos to be remade. So yeah, absolutely, I will be considering remaking the series. Next question is from Will Woods, and he says, my question is, do you think GW will update destroyers and heavy destroyers with Tesla, or perhaps some different style of weapons? I don't think they will, to be honest. I hope they don't. Destroyers are destroyers. Heavy destroyers are heavy destroyers. They've always been that way. I think we will get a new model, and we'll get a plastic heavy destroyer gun in with the model. I mean, I'd be happy to. Personally, I like the destroyer models. I know some people don't. I'd be happy if they just gave us a plastic heavy destroyer gun in that kit. That would be solve all the problems for me. But yeah, I don't think they'll come out with different guns. Next question is from Pawel Niksa. He says, would you, Mr. Nick, consider to pick up a roster sent to you or by your followers, the one which had your attention and interest? Let's say like roster of the month section to make battle reports from it. Absolutely, and I have done that in the past. I've done You Say I Play army lists, which was basically, it was a slight flip because I was beating my buddy pretty much every week, so I came up with this idea for my subscribers to make the worst list they could, and I would play that list and try to win with it. And that wasn't just for Necrons, because I was playing Tyranids and Eldar and stuff back then. And yeah, I think I had 3 or 4 battle reports with worst lists, and I still won all those games. So it wasn't as successful as I thought it might be. But yeah, no. Going back to your question, yes, I'm definitely up for playing my viewers' lists, as long as I've got the models. I am limited on models, however, 2020 I plan on getting a lot more Necron models. Once my Noise Marines are finished, I'm going all out on my Necrons, and I'm going to get up to speed as much as I can with Necrons. I'm going to get more Destroyers, I'm going to get more Doomsday Arcs, I'm going to get more Doom Scythes, hopefully another Triarch Stalker. I just want to beef up my units. I actually want to get some proper Tesla Immortals, and yeah, I'm going to get more. Yeah. Okay. Next question is from Mortis Deamonicus. He says, question 1, have you had a good month? Yes, I've had a good month. Thank you very much. It's the end of February as I'm recording this video, and yeah, it's been good. Yep. Thank you for asking. Next question, when using CPs, do you have a preference in using them, aka to reroll failed wounds, hits, charges, etc.? Okay, so do I have a preference? It depends on the list, really. So when I make a list, I will go to my stratagem card deck, and I will pick out all of the cards which I think will work well with that list, and then I'll have those cards, and I'll have those in priority. So for example, if I'm taking an assault list and I've got, say, 3 units of wraiths, you know, I'll have the stratagem where you can do reanimation on those wraiths for 2 CPs. So if I've got 10 CPs or 8 CPs or whatever, I'll say, right, I want to do that like twice in a game, so I'm going to save 4 CPs for that. And then I'll say, right, well, I've got destroyers in the list, so I'm going to need at least 2 probably CPs to do reanimation protocol. And what I'll do is I'll try to allocate the CPs around and leave a few CPs, assuming I've got enough, to have a spare for that random re-roll that you need, that extra save that you need to re-roll so that the unit doesn't get wiped out or whatever, you know, that sort of chance dice. But I do try to plan my CPs, but it does depend how many I have. Some of my list, maybe not now with the points reductions, but previously I've had a list which have just had 4 CPs in. And you have to be very careful where you use those. Now with the points reductions, it's a lot easier to get those sort of 8 CPs, 9 CPs, so you can be a little bit more extravagant with those CPs, let's say. But I try to plan my CPs for the list. Yeah. Okay. That is a great question. Right. I have 2 non-Necron questions. You'll probably notice I'm not doing my non-Necron Q&A at the moment, and the reason for that is those videos just don't perform. So I'm going to add a couple of non-Necron questions to here because I was asked them on the last video. But if I get a big drop off in this video now, then I won't do this again. Okay, so the next question is from 656543 Dan. He says, with a 1-year-old child, I figure it will be 10th edition by the time he is old enough to play. What's your experience? At what age do you think is old enough? Okay, so in my experience, I would say about 8. Yeah. I tried to get my son into the hobby at about 7, I think it was at 6 or 7, and whilst he did get into the hobby, he fell away from it, let's say, as he got older. But my daughter, she started about 8, and yeah, she seems to have a bit more interest. I think ultimately it depends on the child. I think ultimately you need to see what interest the child has. Well, they could be 3, and if they're showing a lot of interest in it, and you've got a spare old Mini, give it to them and let them paint it. I mean, go for it. In my experience, my son, I didn't force it on him, but I really encouraged him. And whilst he did get into it, that sort of belly flopped a bit because he did lose interest quite a bit. My daughter, I waited for her to ask me about it, and that was when she was about 8, and that seemed to work quite well. But I think it does depend on the child, doesn't it? Okay, next question is from Waferjuice. Tell me more about your ex-wife. Why did you guys divorce? Does she still visit Necrons? Okay, we divorced because she had an affair. Yeah, and that was the same for my first ex-wife as well. So I got 2 ex-wives actually, and they both had an affair. So yeah, and yes, she does see Necrons. Usually, I think she's moved fairly far away now. She works in London. I'm on the south coast, so she sees her. Well, she tries to see her once a week, but sometimes it's once every other week. But yeah. Okay, so that was all the questions. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Beam me up!